John Lennon. John Winston Ono Lennon was born on October 9, 1940, in Liverpool, England. He grew up in a working-class family with his mother, Julia, and his aunt Mimi, who took care of him after his father left when he was very young. From a young age, John showed an interest in music and learned to play the harmonica and the guitar. He met Paul McCartney at a church fete in 1957, and the two quickly became friends and started playing music together. In 1958, John formed the band The Quarrymen, which later evolved into the Beatles. With the addition of George Harrison and Ringo Starr, the Beatles became one of the most successful and influential bands in history. Their music and style had a huge impact on popular culture in the 1960s, and their songs, such as I Want to Hold Your Hand and A Hard Day's Night, became anthems for a generation. Despite the success of the Beatles, John struggled with personal demons throughout his life. He had a tumultuous relationship with his first wife, Cynthia, and was known to have affairs during their marriage. He also struggled with drug use and was vocal about his political beliefs, particularly his opposition to the Vietnam War. In 1969, John married Yoko Ono, an artist and activist who became his partner in music and life. The two collaborated on a number of projects, including their 1969 album Wedding Album and their famous 1969 Bed In for Peace. They also had a son together, John Lennon, in 1975. In 1970, the Beatles broke up, and John began a solo career. He released a number of successful albums, including Imagine in 1971, which is now considered one of the greatest albums of all time. The title track, Imagine, has become an anthem for peace and is often played at memorials and events honoring John's life and legacy. Tragically, John Lennon's life was cut short on December 8, 1980, when he was shot and killed outside of his apartment building in New York City by a mentally unstable fan named Mark David Chapman. His death shocked the world and led to an outpouring of grief and tributes from fans and fellow musicians. Today, John Lennon is remembered not only for his contributions to music but also for his activism and advocacy for peace and social justice. His life and legacy continue to inspire people around the world, and his music remains a beloved and influential part of popular culture. Childhood. John Lennon's childhood was marked by his parents' separation and his mother's death when he was just 17 years old. His mother, Julia, was a musician and taught John to play the banjo and the ukulele. She was killed in a car accident in 1958, which had a profound impact on John and his music. In the song Julia, he sings about his mother and the effect her death had on him. Education. John attended Quarry Bank High School in Liverpool, where he was known for his rebellious nature and his interest in music. He was a mediocre student and dropped out of college at the age of 16. However, he was a talented artist and attended the Liverpool College of Art for a brief period. Relationships. In addition to his marriage to Cynthia Lennon, John had a number of other significant relationships throughout his life. One of his most famous romances was with Japanese artist Yoko Ono, whom he met in 1966. Their relationship was controversial, and many Beatles fans blamed Ono for the band's breakup. However, John and Yoko remained devoted to each other until his death. Political activism. John was a vocal opponent of the Vietnam War and used his platform to advocate for peace and social justice. He and Yoko staged a number of bed-ins and other protests to draw attention to these issues. In 1971, John released the song Power to the People, which became an anthem for the anti-war movement. Personal struggles. John's personal life was marked by a number of struggles, including drug use, mental health issues, and a strained relationship with his father. He was known for his quick temper and his tendency to lash out at those close to him. He also struggled with writer's block and found it difficult to write new music in the years leading up to his death. Legacy. John Lennon's impact on popular culture and music is difficult to overstate. He was a visionary artist who pushed the boundaries of what was possible in music and inspired countless others to do the same. His message of peace and love has resonated with people all over the world, and his music continues to be celebrated and enjoyed by new generations of fans. Influences. John was heavily influenced by American rock and roll music, particularly that of Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. He was also inspired by the poetry of Dylan Thomas and the writing of James Joyce. Later in life, he became interested in avant-garde art and music, which was reflected in his collaborations with Yoko Ono. Solo career. After the Beatles disbanded, John embarked on a successful solo career. He released a number of acclaimed albums, including Mind Games, 1973, and Walls and Bridges, 1974. He also had a number of hit singles, including Instant Karma, 1970, and Whatever Gets You Through the Night, 1974. In addition to his music, John also acted in a number of films, including How I Won the War, 1967, and A Hard Day's Night, 1964. Activism. In addition to his opposition to the Vietnam War, John was also an advocate for a number of social causes, including feminism and LGBT rights. He supported the women's liberation movement and was one of the first male musicians to champion the idea of equal rights for women. He also expressed his support for the LGBT community in a number of interviews and songs, including Imagine. Family life. In addition to his son Sean, John had another son, Julian, with his first wife Cynthia. He had a difficult relationship with Julian, which was largely due to his own personal struggles and the strain of his celebrity status. After his death, Julian spoke publicly about the challenges of growing up as the son of a famous musician. Musical style. John was known for his distinctive vocal style and his use of creative wordplay in his songwriting. He experimented with a range of musical styles throughout his career, from the rock and roll of the Beatles to the more experimental sounds of his later solo work. He was also an accomplished guitarist and pianist, and his musical talent was a major factor in his success. Tragic death. John's death in 1980 was a shock to the world, and his legacy has been shaped in part by the circumstances of his untimely passing. Mark David Chapman, the man who shot John, was a fan who had become obsessed with the musician and his message of peace. John's death sparked an outpouring of grief from fans around the world and led to renewed interest in his music and activism. Religion. John was raised in a Protestant family, but he became disillusioned with organized religion in his teenage years. He famously remarked in 1966 that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus now, which sparked controversy and protests in some parts of the world. Later in life, John became interested in spirituality and meditation, and he and Yoko Ono became followers of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Philanthropy. John was a generous philanthropist who used his wealth and fame to support a number of charitable causes. He and Yoko Ono founded the peace and social justice organization, the Plastic Ono Band, and donated money to a range of organizations, including the Black Panthers and the Anti-Nazi League. He also wrote the song Happy Christmas, War is Over, which was intended to raise awareness about the plight of children in war-torn countries. Film and television. In addition to his music and activism, John had a successful career in film and television. He appeared in a number of films, including How I Won the War, 1967, and Magical Mystery Tour, 1967. He also hosted the avant-garde television program The Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus in 1968, and he made a number of guest appearances on other television shows throughout his career. Health. John struggled with a range of health problems throughout his life, including a chronic eye condition and a digestive disorder known as Barrett's esophagus. He also had a history of drug and alcohol abuse, which took a toll on his physical and mental health. In 1980, he took a hiatus from music to focus on his family and his health, but his plans were tragically cut short by his untimely death. Artistic collaborations. John collaborated with a number of other musicians and artists throughout his career, both as a member of the Beatles and as a solo artist. He worked with his friend Harry Nilsson on the album Pussycats in 1974, and he recorded the duet Fame with David Bowie in 1975. He also collaborated with Yoko Ono on a number of avant-garde art projects, including the experimental film Imagine and the album Unfinished Music No. 1, Two Virgins. Education. John struggled in school and was often described as a disruptive student. He was expelled from Liverpool College of Art in 1960 for his rebellious behavior, but he continued to pursue his interest in art throughout his life. He also had a lifelong love of books and was known to be an avid reader. Relationships. In addition to his marriages to Cynthia Powell and Yoko Ono, John had a number of other romantic relationships throughout his life. He dated fellow art student and musician Stuart Sutcliffe in the early days of the Beatles, and he had a brief affair with actress Barbara Bach in 1977. He was also rumored to have had affairs with other women during his marriages. Personal beliefs. John was known for his outspoken and sometimes controversial opinions on a range of issues. He was an advocate for peace and nonviolence, and he famously staged a bet in for peace with Yoko Ono in 1969. He was also critical of the British government and the monarchy, and he spoke out against racial and economic inequality. In his later years, he became interested in the New Left and the counterculture movement. Legacy. John's influence on popular culture and music has been significant and enduring. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994, and he has been cited as an influence by countless musicians and artists. His music and message of peace continue to resonate with fans around the world, and his legacy has been celebrated through a range of cultural events and tributes. In 2020, on what would have been his 80th birthday, a number of virtual events were held in his honor. John Lennon was a complex and influential figure in the world of music and popular culture. He was a member of one of the most successful and beloved bands in history, but he was also a talented solo artist, a passionate activist, and a generous philanthropist. His outspoken beliefs on peace, nonviolence, and social justice continue to inspire fans around the world, and his legacy has been celebrated through a range of tributes and cultural events. Despite his untimely death in 1980, his music and message continue to resonate with fans today, and he remains an icon of rock and roll and a symbol of hope for a better world. Thank you for watching. If you would like to obtain the documents that contain the texts we use in the videos, please help us with a subscription on our Patreon page. You will also help us to continue making more videos. Learning personal development will give you peace and well-being in your life. Please subscribe and give it a like if you liked it. Don't forget to check the video description to find more information that may interest you. Learn English with personal development. Goodbye.